Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Well, hey guys, welcome to Learn from People Who Lived It. This is the show that's all about when life becomes the teacher. And we're back today with Jill McMahon, who is our grief expert. She's our gun violence survivor. And that's why the show is called Guns and Grief. Last week, we were talking about grief at the workplace. And we said, we got to talk about this because it's so relevant to so many people. And so, Jill, I want to tee up by saying grief is just death, right?
Oh, Matthew, I know you're being silly. Grief is not just death, but I love that you started there. And thanks for poking the bear a little bit. Yeah, thanks for teeing me up real good. It's important because you and I joke, but a lot of people, when you say grief or bereavement, isn't that the first place they go? Who died? That's the first person. Yeah.
It's not just those things.
Not.
All right, talk to me because people are here and they're like, all right, so what is grief? Give me all of it.
Grief is any loss that you feel that you need time to heal from. So that's a great big umbrella statement. But here's a couple common day losses. Infidelity, right? We know a lot of families out there that are trying real hard to get pregnant and are spending a lot of time and money and effort and anxiety and still are struggling with did I say infidelity? I meant infertility, but infidelity is also another loss, right? So both of those are relational. I know one's creating a baby and the other one's probably moving really far away from creating a baby. Both of those are a loss. So any change to a relationship. What about moving out of state? People don't consider how much that uproots your life, right? Your support system you're leaving behind. Your neighborhood grocer, Tom, that you used to wave to every day when you came to get your meats from the deli, your dentists, it's health challenges. What if you are grieving your health? What if you've just experienced a scary diagnosis, right? Housing instability. We have a lot of people right now that are trying to decide if they need to move out of their home because they can no longer afford the rent. You're grieving that. So grief is so many things. It's not just death. It could be your best friend moving away.
I was thinking in the workplace, it could be, I was really hoping to get that job and I didn't get it. I was really hoping that, so-and-so would be hired here and they weren't. For me, it's like, I grieve relationships, right? Like, even though my mom's no longer with me, sometimes I have to grieve the fact that we never really had the relationship that I'd hoped we would, and that, sticks with. So I'm glad we're spelling this out for everyone because grief is bigger than just death. And the reason that I wanted to talk about grief in the workplace is because this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Now, last week on the podcast, we were talking about like what you should say, what you shouldn't say to people when they're grieving. And I feel like this gets even more complicated at the office where you're like, especially in our hypersensitive, way overly sensitive culture right now, where you're like, you're afraid to open up your mouth. And so we all know what happens when you say nothing. I mean, look, sometimes that's better, but like a lot of times, people would like to hear from you. So I want you to address that first piece, which is how do we handle grief at the workplace with a coworker or a friend or a boss or whatever that may be? Do you have any best practices over there, Smarty Pants?
Oh, my friend, I think you just brought up a really important factor. I think that employee manual has us all scared to death. Right. And what's happening is it's been drilled in our head at the moment we've been hired. But what if you've been in a company for years and years and years and you're in management? You're just as afraid to approach uncomfortable conversations as the person that so desperately needs you to approach the uncomfortable conversation. So fear really is a deterrent in supporting our community. I don't know if you've noticed that. Right? So a workplace is a community, Matthew. And what I will say is, if you were looked over for that promotion that you've been working so hard to fight for and you felt like you were the person for the job, that's grief, right? You're starting to question, what am I doing here? Am I valued? Does anybody see me? Am I invisible? So workplace grief is very complicated because it's not only the grief that you're bringing from the outside in, it's grief that can be created by your workplace and festers while you're there.
Here's the other thing that is worth talking about. Most companies that I've worked for before, when you do need to take your bereavement leave, they give you a massive 3 to 4 days to get over your shit. And look, it can take a couple of years for people to start to feel like they're all the way back to themselves after somebody's died or after there's been a big change or some of these things. And so let's talk directly to HR professionals and CEOs and people that are in charge of companies. Is it time for us to be looking at our bereavement policy, not just to include more days, but to include more factors?
Absolutely, my friend. And there is a real world out there that is starting to tackle this topic. So there are now coaches and specialists that go out and work with human resources departments, giant corporations and CEOs about their bereavement policies and their bereavement behaviors. Because what we do know is that an employee won't leave a company because they feel over supported. They will leave a company because they feel unseen, especially in a time of transition and grief. So, I'm going to implore first and foremost that for the HR departments or the management team, take a step back from the employee manual. Take a step back from the fear and really look internally and ask yourself the question, how would I want to be treated? Or how would I want my family members to be treated in this moment of putting my life back together, right? If we come from that place. So it's interesting. I read a study just a few weeks ago that said what we really need to do is we need to go back to the 1950s, 60s, and 70s way of managing our employees. Before AI was introduced, we didn't have 3-ring binder after 3-ring binder after 3-ring binder of policies and procedures and ethical responsibilities and ways in which we need to be concerned about lawsuits and liability. And so I would argue, this is kind of a different conversation, but we're still talking about workplace grief. I would argue that so much of our workplace relationships really stem from that employee manual and the fear that is written within those pages. You just said it, like we're all walking a tight line. And I want to be, I know you know this, but I think it's important to say, as a culture, my friend, we just suck when it comes to dealing with grief. So I'm not going to be a fool and imply that it should be any better within an office, right? I think we have a long way to go in all the arenas, but I really do think that HR departments need to start considering secondary loss. And you were alluding to that earlier, right? So in America, we have this bereavement process that is you get 3 days off if the funeral was in state and you get 4 days off if the funeral was out of state, right? And we're just thinking about the immediate loss. And we want Johnny to come back and we want Johnny to pick up right where he left off. And there's a stack of files on his desk and his voicemail possibly hasn't been cleaned out. Maybe it has, but we know he's in the middle of this important project and the project needs to be done by the end of the month because we have investors that are counting on that deadline. And so Johnny comes in, we say, Johnny, you good? Like this is our re-entry interview. Once somebody comes home from a funeral or a house fire and they had to take a week off to try to find housing for their family, right? Johnny, you good? You're still going to be good with the deadline, right? You can still make March 15th. You're good? Okay, buddy, go get it. We're here if you need us, though. We're here if you need us. And so you can go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, like, But it's not just corporate America's fault. It's our fault too, right? Because you meet a lot of people who say, "Man, I just want to get back to work. Like I just want to forget about this. I want to just get back into the swing of things and get back into my day-to-day life." And what I think is the root of all of this, potentially, love your opinion on this, author of friend of mine. But Courtney and I were talking about this the other day. It's our inability to sit in the mud. It's our inability to sit in the uncomfortable space. And we'd rather just plow through and wait for that shit to show up 30 years later. It's an interesting way that we think about it. And so, yes, corporate America could do a lot to adjust the way that they think about it, but like we could do a lot to adjust the way that we think about it too.
Just sit in the shit, everybody. Just sit in the shit. This is why I surround myself with wise people. You just said you and Courtney had this conversation. I'm like, of course I'm aligned with Matthew and Courtney. And I actually think there are a lot of other people that are aligned with us. It's just harder to put into action. So let's start at the very beginning. Okay. If you're somebody who's
like Genesis
grieving, no, at the beginning of this conversation, sir, don't take it back. If you're a person who's grieving whatever loss it is in your life, let's just say your mom just received a horrible diagnosis. You know that it's going to change everything. You're probably going to have to be her caregiver. You're trying to figure out how you're going to, be there for your family, complete your work tasks on time, financially support your aging, ailing mother. So a lot going on up here. You've been off for a while because she was hospitalized. You returned to work and you don't know, you're not uncomfortable sharing that shit with people at the office. Here's my piece of advice for you. And it's so simple. I call it the back pocket.
All right, turn it up, friends. Here we go.
You've heard it. Let's go. When you have a story that you don't know how to share and you're not sure you want to get into it with people in that atmosphere, you better have a 2 to 3 sentence story written on a note card in your back pocket. That's why I call it back pocket. I want you, before you walk into that building, to know what you're going to say when people are going to ask you uncomfortable questions, because they might not, but they might. And you already feel like your world has been spun inside out. This is the one way that you get to take control of your story and your narrative. So if you have to go in and you think you're going to have to talk to the boss, but you maybe don't want to give the boss all the details because you're afraid that you're going to cry and you're not comfortable crying at work, go in with your back pocket story, 2 to 3 sentences. That's one way that you can help regain control in a moment where you feel out of control.
Give me an example of that. Give me an example of that.
Sure. And our audience probably doesn't know, I deal in catastrophic loss. So I deal in suicide, sudden and traumatic losses that are unexpected, many stories that people don't want to hear. And that population is faced day in and day out with curiosities. How did he die? Ooh, what happened? And so what I've told that population to do is to arm themselves with their back pocket note card. So before they go into a social party or before they return to work, to be prepared to say, it's been really hard since Nathan was gone. And I'm not sure I'm ever going to be able to understand what happened. Period. End of sentence. All I'm going to say, put the note card in your back pocket and you go about your day. But if I may be faced with questions that I'm not sure I'm going to be comfortable sharing in that work atmosphere, because maybe work isn't safe for me. First and foremost, you and I both know you can't grieve in an environment that is not safe.
I say it all the time, Jill. You can't heal in a war zone.
Exactly. It's the same message, buddy. It's the same message. And for some people, they're really good at compartmentalizing, and work is just work. It is a place you go and you spend 8, 9, 10 hours a day going through your checklists, completing tasks, completing what needs to be completed so that you can go about paying your bills and living your day, and they go home. That's not a safe environment, right? For others, it's a community and it's a family. So first and foremost, you can't expect somebody to grieve in an environment that they don't feel is safe. If you feel unsafe at work, or if you don't feel comfortable because you're not comfortable sharing your shit with other people, have that note card, that imaginary note card in your back pocket. Third, I'm going to implore all of the administrators, bosses, support staff to just be human. It's that simple. Ask yourself, how would I want somebody to respond to me or my loved one, my child, my sibling, if they were faced with the same situation and they were coming back to work, right? Start there. I always say, there's no harm in asking, what do you need? I mean, that's a foreign concept, right? And you and Courtney were so right, buddy, when you were like, it's because people are uncomfortable sitting in discomfort. That's why they don't ask the question.
Okay, so let me just poke that a little bit. Like, asking people, what do you need? We've talked in other episodes where that's like one of the worst questions that you can ask somebody is like, hey, what do you need right now? Because they're not in a position to tell you what they need. But what I'm hearing is that at the workplace, that question means something different. I don't know. I'm asking for you to articulate that a little bit.
And I'm glad you called me out on that, because we just said last week that that's probably the worst thing you could say to a griever.
Right.
So thank you for calling me to the mat, sir.
Yeah.
And I still stand by that in the day-to-day community world. When you're in a work environment, it's a whole different message when your coworker or your desk mate walks up to you and says, buddy, what do you need? Like, do you need me to take some of this workload off your desk for you for a couple days while you catch your breath, since you're reacclimating into the 9 to 5, schedule? Or because I know that you have a really important test coming up and you're probably going to get the results on that scan. What can I do for you right now? Or here's a different way to word it. What do you need from me right now? Do you need me to listen, or do you need me to take action for you?
I was thinking that what you could say is get specific. You could say something like, hey, and I'm totally willing to sit in on this meeting for you if you need me to. Hey, I'm totally willing to work on that spreadsheet for a little while if you need me to. Rather than what do you need, getting specific with somebody and saying, hey, I'm willing to do this for you if you need me to. And just like scratch that intuitive itch of what you just said. Like, if that were you, what would you kind of want somebody else to lift off your table?
And here's another important rule of thumb to add to that list, which I think is going to complete it. Ask them, or do you just need me to back away and let you dig your head in the sand and get your work done? And this is why that's an important question to ask, right? So somebody returns to work, somebody's going through a really challenging time in life. They're struggling, that they're going through an intense loss. You start by, hey, what can I do for you? Can I sit in that meeting for you? I'll go ahead and take your call log today, or maybe I'm going to bring in lunches for us for the week. So just don't even worry about that. Do you maybe want to go on a walk once or twice a day, like because you just need to breathe and you feel confined in these walls, or you just need to get away from Chip back there because we all know that he's obnoxious? Here's another thing I want you to consider.
Why don't we just fire Chip?
I don't know. Chip sounds like a fun guy to me, but
or ...
Don't forget to include, do you just want me to leave you alone? Because that's a need, Matthew. That's a need. So what I have learned and boy, was I put in my place. What I had learned in my years and years of sitting with grievers is I used to use this example. Shame on me. I know now it was wrong, but I used to use this example in my support groups. And I would say, and typically most men bury their heads in the sand of work to escape the immense grief that they are in. And after years of using this example, which I still don't think is all that far off, I think a lot of us can relate to what I was trying to say. I had this amazing gentleman wait for me after a support group was over, just waiting in the corner, like, I have something to say. He's like, so Jill, I know you'll use that example. He's like, but I need to tell you that not all men bury their heads in the sand. And maybe because other people don't see us grieve, they don't realize that when we are in the car driving from the home to the office, we sob the entire way there. But for us, we need to go to work and get purposeful. We need to have a focus. So for many of us, work is a breather from the pain. And it is the only way that we can survive. So I really, it was brilliant. And again, I always learn from others, hence the name of this entire show, my friend. But I gained a lot from him that day.
I think this is one of the more important conversations you and I have ever had together. And we've had some very meaty, great conversations, but this one is just so relevant and so useful. And I just want to remind everybody that Jill's written an incredible book called Bulletproof. If you scan that QR code in the top left, you'll be taken to a spot where you can pick it up and have a read. Or there's the audio version out too. So if you're like me and you don't want to read, you can have a listen. I just want to encourage everybody to hit that like and subscribe button on our show and pass this along to a friend. Share this with a coworker who might need to hear this, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's experienced grief in their life recently. And again, it's not just death. Thanks again, Jill, for our time together. And I look forward to seeing you next week as well. Have a great weekend and happy Chinese New Year. We're celebrating for a few more days. And so keep the celebrations going on your end.
Bye, guys. See everybody next week. Thank you, Matthew, for the time.